When hearts remember. The rain had started again, just like it did that September evening when everything changed. Chidi stood at her kitchen window, watching the droplets race down the glass, each one seeming to carry a memory she'd tried so hard to forget. 3 years. It had been 3 years since she'd seen Emeka, since she'd heard his voice, since she'd felt that particular kind of happiness that only he could bring. They'd met at her cousin's wedding, a cliché she used to laugh about. Emeka had been seated at her table, struggling with his tie, and she'd offered to help without thinking. Their fingers had touched briefly, and something had shifted in the air between them. He'd smiled, really smiled, and said, "I'm terrible at these things. At weddings, I mean. I never know what to say to strangers." "Then don't treat me like one," she'd replied. And he hadn't. From that first conversation about everything and nothing, his work as an architect, her dreams of opening her own bookstore, their shared love of old Nollywood films and jollof rice debates, they'd fallen into each other's lives as naturally as breathing. The months that followed were golden. Emeka would show up at her apartment with her favorite chin-chin from the market, and they'd spend hours on her balcony, talking until the mosquitoes drove them inside. He'd sketch buildings on napkins while she read passages from books, and somehow they'd created their own language, their own world. "You're going to think I'm crazy," he'd said one night, 6 months in, his hand warm in hers. "I already do," she'd teased. "I'm serious, Chidi. I think you're it for me. The person I've been waiting for, without knowing I was waiting." She'd kissed him then, tasting salt from happy tears she didn't remember crying. "Then I guess we're both crazy." But love, Chidi learned, wasn't always enough to hold two people together when the world pulled them apart. The job offer had come for Emeka, a position in Dubai with a firm that could launch his career into the stratosphere. It was everything he'd worked toward, everything he deserved. The problem was, Chidi had just signed a lease on her bookstore space, had poured her savings and her heart into the dream she'd carried since childhood. "Come with me," he'd begged, his eyes desperate in a way that broke her. "We'll figure it out. You can open a bookstore there or wait a few years." "A few years?" The words had come out sharper than she'd intended. "Emeka, this is my dream. I can't just put it on hold. And this is mine. Why does yours matter more?" The argument that followed had been their worst, words thrown like stones, each one finding its mark. She'd accused him of being selfish, of asking her to give up everything. He'd said she was being stubborn, unwilling to compromise. Both were right, both were wrong. "I love you," he'd said finally, his voice breaking. "But I can't stay and watch you resent me for holding you back, and I can't watch myself become bitter because I gave up this chance." "So that's it?" Chidi had whispered. "We just end?" "I don't want to, but I don't see how we can make this work without one of us losing ourselves." They'd tried to stay friends, but some loves are too big to shrink down into casual texts and polite updates. The last message she'd sent him, "I hope you're happy," had gone unanswered. She'd told herself it was better that way. Cleaner. Now, 3 years later, the rain reminded her of lies she'd told herself. That she was over him, that she'd made the right choice. That the bookstore, successful as it was, filled all the spaces in her heart. Her phone buzzed. An unknown number. She almost didn't answer. "Chidi?" The voice reached through time and grabbed her heart. "It's me. I'm back in Lagos. Just for a week. I know I have no right to call, but I had to hear your voice. I had to know if—" He paused, and she could hear him breathing, could picture him running his hand through his hair, the way he always did when he was nervous. "If there's any chance you might want to see me. Just to talk. Just to— I don't know. I've carried you with me every single day, and I just need to know if you ever think about us." Chidi closed her eyes, rain and tears mixing on her face. The smart thing would be to say no, to protect herself from reopening wounds that had barely healed, but her heart had never been smart when it came to Emeka. "Yes," she whispered. "Tomorrow. The bookstore. You remember where it is?" She could hear the smile in his voice, that same smile from the wedding. I could never forget. When she hung up, Chidi didn't know if she'd just made the best decision of her life or was walking straight back into heartbreak. But she knew this. Some love stories don't end. They just pause, waiting for the right moment to continue. And maybe, just maybe, tomorrow would be theirs. The rain kept falling, but now it sounded different. Like a beginning.